Hello, so my name is Gabrielle and I am a graduate of Boston University and currently work in marketing and communications, and thought I would share in this video a few of my tips to those who might be deciding on their major in college, who have already decided to pursue journalism, PR, or advertising, or maybe someone who's evaluating whether to make a career change. So if you fall into any of those categories, this video will be some advice that I have for you. I've also asked some of my friends from college who currently work in the industry their tips and tricks and best advice, so I'll be sharing some of their recommendations with you as well. So just to give a little bit of background on myself, again, I graduated from Boston University, Go Terriers, where I specialized in public relations within the College of Communication. I currently work in the marketing and communication space, specifically in the edtech nonprofit sector, which is a really interesting sector that I really enjoy. So I thought I would give some tips because I know for me, trying to get a job initially out of college and just the whole process is very anxiety-inducing and nerve-wracking, so I wanted to share with you all. Now, in terms of deciding my major, that was a big deal for me because when I initially got accepted into college, I knew that I had loved English. That was my preferred subject always throughout life, but I didn't want to major in English. Of course, the whole idea of, being a liberal arts major and majoring in English, people are like, you're gonna be broke the rest of your life. So I internalized that message and thought about some alternative paths where I could still use my love for English, but find something that might be more of a long-term career, because I didn't want to be a teacher and I didn't want to be a librarian or a book editor or an author, so that's kind of like the only options that my mind saw. But I had some friends who were admitted to BU with advertising and communication majors, so as I did my general studies courses, I was interested into the work that they were doing, so I looked further into the options my school had on majors. Now, I will say I didn't specifically study marketing because that was technically within our business school, but I did study communications, so I'll share what I can. One of the biggest reasons I decided to pursue public relations was because it involved a bit more of the English side of things with the writing that goes into it, and also I just found it a really creative and interesting field with a very diverse range of job opportunities for the future. So just to share briefly into some of the type of roles that I've done, I had a few different internships throughout college. I got to do so many different things, making videos, social media content, working with the media, and then I had a few different other experiences while I studied abroad. In London, I interned with a fashion communications agency. Now, I know I mentioned that I asked some of my friends who work in the industry some of their most helpful tips. So I'll share some of those with you now, again, to help you decide if this is a good path and major career path for you to take. So for advertising more specifically, two of my friends that I talked with have shared this information. One of my friends, he has worked at companies such as Ogilvy and currently does advertising consultancy in the tech industry. He shared that advertising is mostly data synthesis at this point, if you're anything other than in the creative field, and so don't be afraid of numbers. Learn how to use data for storytelling. Some key things that you might want to look into are developing more skills in Excel and Python, and I totally agree with what he shared. If you're not too familiar with the field, numbers is a key driving force within the field. Where people are going, what people are looking at is what you want to create content and drive your business towards. If you're watching YouTube, you may know about the YouTube algorithm, And so that is a number that is a driving force into advertising dollars and what people are creating content in. There are a lot of programs and platforms out there for you to gain more skills in things like Excel and Python, but do feel free to comment below if you're interested in me making more videos on some of that content and how you can gain skills in that. Now, my other friend who I asked, who currently works in advertising, she has worked at companies such as Mullen Lowe, which are prominent advertising agencies, and quite a few other different organizations. But she shared to expose yourself to as many departments as possible within the industry, and you'll be surprised with how many roles you can learn during things like internships. So I totally agree. You know, there's a vast amount of opportunities, some on the more creative side where you're designing the visual materials that potential customers of a client will see. So, you know, a billboard, a social media post, etc. That's more of the creative side, whereas there's so much that goes behind the scenes of working with various stakeholders to decide what sort of campaign you will want to work on, whether that be a video and you're organizing models for the shoot of a cruise line's promotional advertisement. There's so many different options, and so you want to explore whether you want to be in any side of that work. Another key tip she shared is to be a sponge, especially when you're starting your career. Every experience is a learning moment. And once again, I totally agree, because there's what everyone does, which is learning how to be a professional in the working world, but specifically within this field, this sector, you will want to ensure that you're learning as much as possible, because the communications field changes so much all the time. What systems are being used, what analytics are most helpful, what platforms are most popular with people. You'll always want to stay in tune with what's most relevant at the time. Now, for a lot of people like me, you may be deciding that you do like to communicate with a lot of different people, you like to bring people together, or maybe you do like to create those visual materials, so you decide this is a path for you. One thing you'll want to think about is whether you want to be focused on the in-house side versus the agency side, which is what you'll find a lot with advertising and public relations related jobs. Now, an agency is a larger company that usually has multiple clients of sometimes different sectors, or it might be the same sector that they produce materials for. So often larger companies, instead of having a communications team within the company, they will work with this agency to do the work for them. And then alternatively, in-house is when you're working for the company itself, producing those communications materials. So this will impact where you apply for jobs and how you go about that process, but it's definitely something I would say consider. For myself, while I was learning more about the whole field and sector throughout college, I was more inclined towards looking to the in-house side, because I love to have my hands on a variety of different work, as opposed to one thing you might find in the agency work is that if you're in a specific role, you're more often tied to the specific work in that role. So for example, an in-house team might be in charge of creating the social media content, communicating with external stakeholders, outreaching to new partner organizations or clients to work with. Whereas if you're working in an agency, your role might be the one in charge of developing the visual materials. You then work with somebody else who communicates with those external organizations, etc. So that's just a very minimal example. But then another pro on the other side is that with an agency, they're usually much larger. There's a lot of different clients that you can work with. Whereas in-house, you're stuck to what that organization does, and that's the topic that you work in. So it's definitely interesting work. And like I said, I've worked in both type of organizations, so I'd encourage you to look into that. And if you're in that interning phase, try both organizations, both the agency and in-house option. Now I'll wrap things up with some skills that you'll want to work on developing to do well in this field. So again, of course, it all depends on the type of role that you ultimately have, but general skills that I think everyone could benefit from are people skills. So I'd recommend reading some really good books. Two in particular that I will recommend are How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is a good book that shares, kind of as the name implies, how to work with a diversity of people, how to speak well with others. And then another one that I really enjoyed is Crucial Conversations. So this is more of a professionalism book, but it can honestly help you with your personal relationships. And as the name again says, crucial conversation. So it's about how to have those uncomfortable talks. It can help you when communicating with your boss, with your coworkers, with external people on how to best handle the situation to produce that mutual result and benefit that you're looking for. Another key tip is to stay current. And by that, what I mean is, depending on whatever sector and field you work in, whether that's tech, education, food and beverage, etc., always stay up to date on what are the current events and current topics in that field. Like I had mentioned, the technology, softwares that we use are always changing. The social media platforms that are most popular are always evolving. And so same thing with what is relevant to your field. Depending on if there's a specific sector that you pursue, you want to make sure you're frequently staying up to date on what's happening. So some ways you can do that is you can set up Google Alerts, which goes to your email. And so essentially you type in a term such as Pepsi, and you will then get alerted every time Pepsi is mentioned in an article or newspaper, and that way you can read articles on what's relevant to Pepsi. So if you're working in food and beverage, that's just a random example. You can set up these alerts for people's names, organization names, products, locations, etc. That way, as you are wanting to stay in tune, you can do that. Or, of course, you can read direct websites and news sources that write about your topic. So if you feel like I missed anything, please feel free to add your thoughts down in the comments below, or reach out to me if you have any additional questions or you would like any advice on how to move forward in your career. I was definitely nervous in the job application process, and also just, working through college can be a big deal. So you want to make sure that you're gaining as much information as possible. Oh, I totally forgot. I should have mentioned that as the number one tip is to, as you're gaining those people skills, you want to make sure that you are networking. This is for all college students and people in general, but you want to make sure that you are representing yourself well, and it expands your options for job opportunities and professional development opportunities. But every opportunity you have throughout college, I would say take it to make connections within the communications field, because that is an invaluable asset to you throughout your career. So yeah, again, I hope you enjoy and find these helpful, but until next time, I hope you have a great day.